Welcome to You Make Sense. This podcast is a manual to understanding your human experience so that you can navigate the world with freedom, ease, empowerment, and create the life that you desire. Remember, you make sense, all parts, always. So today we're going to talk about what it's like to come into a safe, secure attachment for the first time. Something I hear people say all the time is with confusion. They say something like, I've met this amazing person, the person of my dreams, but why doesn't it feel good? Why am I struggling so much in this? There's so many things about this person that I love and I want this to work out. And yet I feel like my life is kind of turned upside down or it doesn't feel the way I expected. So today we're going to make sense of this very confusing experience so many of us have. And of course, I'm going to give you some practical things you can do to begin stepping into the relationship of your dreams with greater ease so you can actually enjoy the relationship that you have. Now, the first thing I want to say is, if you find yourself in a beautiful, wonderful dynamic, whether that's somebody you've known for a month or you've been in this relationship for a year or two, this is something to celebrate, especially if this is not the pattern that you have experienced historically in your life. This is called an earned secure attachment, meaning if previously you were in dynamics where, the person was never available or they betrayed you or they left or you didn't have space in the relationship for yourself or it was a toxic kind of dynamic and now you're in a healthy one, this isn't happening because you happen to get lucky. This is occurring because you have clearly done enough work to draw this person in. That's why it's called an earned secure attachment. A lot of people ask me all the time, how do I pick different in terms of romantic partners? Well, you can't just pick different, but what you can do is do the internal work necessary to draw in and attract the person that you have essentially become for yourself. And so in order for you to do this, and if you are already at this place, I want to celebrate you that you have done internal co-regulation with your parts, and essentially you have created an internal secure attachment. So I just want to briefly make sense of all this for anyone listening who's saying, well, I really want that. I really want that kind of relationship. Or if you find yourself in this dynamic, this is really in a healthy dynamic, this is to celebrate you. So at any given moment, every one of us is choosing a partner subconsciously. If you're out in the dating world is what I mean, and you're dating, you're choosing that person subconsciously. The reason why I'm saying that is because we all have this thing called neuroception. It's a threat detector in your brainstem. It looks out into the world every millisecond of your life to see if you're safe or not. The way that it decides is by looking to or resourcing your internal database or computer system that we talk about a lot here on this podcast that has every lived experience inside of it you have ever had. So this is the database that it looks to not only see if you're safe, but to decide how it should orient to whatever's occurring in your life. So if you want to go out and date, it looks to the database and it says, well, what information do we have on love, connection, intimacy, vulnerability, all of those things that you're wanting in a romantic relationship. And if we have not done our work yet, and we have, historically from our childhoods, we have experiences where our needs weren't met, where we couldn't take up space, where we had to caretake others, then that's going to be the blueprint for how you show up in adult relationships. And we will literally draw in partners who are going to replicate that dynamic with us. And we can do it again and again and again. I can tell you I did this for almost 2 decades, like from my earliest dating experiences in middle school all the way well into my adult life, I was replicating the pattern. And for me, the pattern was I had no needs. I couldn't take up space. I was never chosen fully in those relationships, always left. That was the pattern because it replicated my childhood. So when we do this, it literally changes our picker, or meaning neuroception, literally draws in different people. And the work that's really necessary to do this is parts work. Essentially, what we're doing here is we are going back to the past and giving our younger parts new relational experiences with us. So when you hear about internal family systems or inner child work, that's essentially what we're doing. And by giving my younger parts the connection, the attunement, the unconditional love, the safety, etc., that I never got, what occurs is I actually am imprinting new childhood experiences. So then when my neuroceptive response goes and looks for love, it says, well, what intel do we have on love? And based on the things we've given ourselves, now love means showing up for myself, means being seen, being heard safely, being known safely, being unconditionally loved, and all of the wonderful things we want. And so now as neuroception is literally drawing partners in for us, that is the type of partner it is drawing in, the partner that you have become for yourself. So when people say, be the partner that you want. What the hell does that mean? Anytime I've heard people say that, I'm like, can you please explain it to people? So my hope is that I'm giving you a practical application of what that actually looks like. So if you find yourself right now in a beautiful, safe, wonderful relationship that doesn't feel good, I celebrate you. Feel good yet. We're going to talk about how it can feel good. I celebrate you because it's the result of the work that you've done. And it is no small feat to actually change the pattern that perhaps we've been in for decades and decades before. So that's a really big deal. Now, what I want to also say that I just kind of named a minute ago is that the good doesn't feel good at first. And that can be wildly confusing for people. I can tell you as a professional and expert in this work, even for me, when I finally came into an earned secure attachment and a beautiful relationship, it did not feel good at first. It felt confusing and overwhelming and terrifying and all the different things that we're going to get to in a moment. And I do this every day as a professional. I've done it for a decade. And I just want to normalize this for you. So I just want to explain why the good doesn't always feel good at first in our relational dynamics when we're first coming in to a safe, healthy relationship. Now, if in the past our needs weren't met, so that was inhibited, we didn't have the attunement, the vulnerability, the safety, the connection, the love, all of those things, then our nervous system is not used to all of those good things. And so our nervous system likes what they know. And all the things that I just named, love, connection, adoration, softness, attunement, all of that has an energetic charge to it. So if our nervous system was deprived of that, our parts and ourselves were deprived of that, we don't know how to actually take it in. It will feel like a lot or overwhelming for our nervous system. So that's one of the reasons why the good doesn't feel good at first. Another reason why the good doesn't feel good at first is because if in the past our caregivers were dangerous to us, then our nervous system is saying, I don't know yet fully that this person is going to be different. So we might notice that we feel really overwhelmed by the experience of that connection. And so all of those examples I just gave are really normal parts of the process. I can tell you for myself, I experienced all of that. So having a partner who is loving and kind and generous and consistent and adoring felt really overwhelming for me because they were things that I never got. And so as someone was wanting to lean into me and choose me, my system wanted to do was run and hide because it was something I hadn't received. And another reason for myself was because my caregivers were also the source of danger. So the closer someone got, the more terrified I became. And again, all of that is a really normal part of the process. So I want to go over 2 ways that we can experience and earn secure attachment, or this relationship of your dreams, the secure attachment that you're experiencing now, the thing you really want to work out. One of those ways is that it can feel boring or lifeless. This does not mean that the relationship is wrong for you. This relationship might be exactly right for you. And this tends to be or can be a very normal part of the process. So if our nervous systems are oriented towards love being from survival, based on our earliest childhood experiences, then that is what's going to feel attractive to our system. An example of that is, let's say you had a caregiver who was on again, off again in their ability to connect with you. So they were sometimes there, sometimes not there. It felt like you had to earn their love. Maybe they withheld love sometimes and you felt panicked and you had to do everything you could to get their love back. And then when you got their love back, you felt relief. Your system is saying that's what love is. And so your system then also says this other thing that you might be in now, this thing that's safe and consistent and steady, your system's going to say, at first, I don't think that's love, because I'm used to love being this other thing that is like really can feel like, well, in a lot of ways I say this, it feels like we're drowning and then we get resuscitated. We're drowning and then we get resuscitated. And we'll find ourselves in relational dynamics like that. And we can confuse that with love, but that is not love. That's connection from survival versus love from choice. So if our system's oriented to that, when we meet somebody who is emulating that for us, they're not fully available, they're not fully choosing us. When you're with them, it can feel electric in moments of connection, and then it feels like panicky, like I'm out of control, I'm not going to survive this when I'm in disconnection with them. And then it's like I come back into connection and now I'm not drowning and I can breathe. So we go from this drowning feeling to I can breathe, drowning feeling I can breathe. And we are confusing that with love. And when you're with someone like that, you might notice that when you kiss them or you're intimate with them, it feels so alive. And in many ways, it'll feel like this drug that I can't get enough of, that's this insatiable desire for it that never quite makes me feel safe. Now, when you come into love that's safe, like an earned secure attachment, that's like somebody having a boat out in the water and they're just cruising along in this steady boat. There is no falling out of the boat and getting back in. They're just cruising along. And so for us, being in the boat at first can feel kind of boring. I'm not having that experience of life or death, like I'm going to drown and then I survive and I'm going to drown. And then look at you, this amazing person that resuscitated me. I'm just cruising along. And because of that, there can feel like a level of lacking that fire at first, or lacking that inspiration. You might even notice when you kiss somebody or you're intimate with them, whom is somebody you really want to be with, that it kind of just feels nice, feels safe, it feels enjoyable. Then people usually report to me back and they say things like that. Yeah, it was nice. But it's not like that other thing with that other person who then ended up not choosing me, or that pattern that I've been in. So a lot of times people can think this must mean it's wrong. And that most certainly isn't true. This might very well mean that your system is reorienting towards safe love. And at first, because this is unknown, it can feel a little benign or it can feel a little boring. But what I really want you to know is it won't not have to be, it won't be that way forever. The more that you build your capacity for this experience of steady love, the more your system can see, oh, it is safe to be in this with another person. I can receive you more and experience you more. The more that you aren't just in this boring canoe. Now you can take this canoe and go all kinds of places, and you can look out on the horizon and see beautiful things, and you can, do fun things inside of the canoe. It becomes a really beautiful, alive connection. So really important to understand, if you are in that place where it's feeling like, it's nice, but it's not like that other thing, you are likely on the right track. And the more that you build your capacity to be in it, the more that it actually becomes this beautiful, safe container of true, real love, which is allowing yourself to be fully you, to be fully seen, to be fully present, to be playful and joyful, and let all parts be here, and the other to do the same. And the relationship really comes to life in a beautiful way. And your orientation to it is no longer that this is boring, but that this is filled with real, true aliveness. And that's what love from choice allows us. So I just want to name anybody who is there. This is what it looks like. And I personally know this very well myself. I was so used to being oriented towards having to earn love that I really thought that was love. But in fact, all my system was doing was trying to escape my past where I never was chosen. And I felt like if I could just get somebody to stay, then I'll be enough. And so I was in this this fruitless and endless battle to be chosen. And it feels very different than love from choice and love from safety, and what true love actually is. Now, the other thing I just want to say about an earned secure attachment, the other thing that it can feel at first is it can feel terrifying. And I don't say that lightly. It can feel truly, truly scary for our parts. If you've had experiences in the past where, in your earliest childhood, where your caregivers were dangerous in some way, maybe they were abusive emotionally or physically to you, then your system is saying intimacy and closeness is not safe. And so what will happen is, as this person comes close to you who is actually safe, your nervous system is going to say, I don't trust that because in the past it wasn't safe. And so it can actually be quite confusing, because at first you get into a relationship and you might notice that with someone who's wonderful, you might notice that it feels, pretty good. You might notice some of the boring stuff maybe, or it just feels nice. And then the closer that you get to the other person, the more what occurs is your parts, or your protective parts, are letting down their guard. And that means that you're more exposed. That means that you're more vulnerable. That means that you're being seen more. So it can feel really paradoxical that towards the early stages of dating, you might feel really confident and you might feel, pretty comfortable and safe. And then the closer you get, the more that there is vulnerability and exposure, the more your system says, wow, this is really dangerous because it wasn't safe to let other people close to me in the past. And all that's occurring there is our younger parts are just superimposing the past on the present. Even though our partner, this wonderful, safe partner, is so different than the past, there are these these remnants of these parts saying, yeah, but I'm not sure. And so if in your past, closeness meant being harmed, closeness meant being hurt, then the closer your partner gets, you might notice some panic arising, or you might notice some trepidation coming up. For me, this was absolutely the case. At first, I noticed I felt, pretty good. But the closer that we got, the more that I was exposed, and the closer they came to me, the more my parts would say things like, they weren't always just saying it. I was also just feeling this. This isn't safe. They're going to be like the past. They're going to hurt me or harm me in some way. Another thing that I felt very much, and this can be common too, is the closer you get, the more parts can feel like they're going to be trapped. Now, if you experienced in your childhood experiences where you were harmed and you couldn't get away in your childhood home, then your parts are going to say, I have to make sure that never happens again. So the closer that you get, the more you bond, the more you're attaching, you may notice that your parts are going to say, I have to get out of here because I never, ever, ever want to be trapped again. And in that, I just want to name quickly, it's very important that you are able to communicate that to your partner. So to feel it for yourself and then communicate it to your partner. By the way, we want to communicate all of this stuff to your partner. And if you're in a safe, secure attachment, it'll be a place where you can do that. And that's really a major part of stepping more deeply into this relationship and it feeling really good for you. But particularly around this trap feeling, that's something that I had come up a lot. And communicating, I'm noticing this is arising, is so important so that we can perhaps say to our partner, I need to know that I can leave at any moment. And of course, adult us knows I can leave at any moment, but a part needs to hear that they can do that. So having a partner say back to you, I don't want to own you, and you can leave at any moment. Any moment that you want to go, you can go, are things that some of these parts need to hear. And when they actually get that and are able to receive it and believe it to be true, the panic and terror can begin to dissipate. And that's really, really important. Thing I want to name here regarding all of the stuff I just brought up, how it can feel boring at first, how it can feel terrifying, how we can feel trapped, is that we have these beautiful protective parts that can come in around this time in the relationship and try to sabotage it. Not because they don't want you to have this beautiful relationship, but because, again, we are just getting oriented to it, meaning our systems are just learning how to be inside of this container. And we don't yet have enough data points to know for sure that it's safe and to know for sure that we can trust this person to open up deeply to them. So protective parts will do all kinds of things to try to get you out of the relationship. I have had so many protective parts try to do this to me. It could sound like this. You might have a part that says things like, there's somebody better out there for you. And that person, that TV show is so much better than the partner that you're with. And if you were just with them, then life would be amazing. So living in fantasy, that is a way that parts try to get you out of actually going more deeply into a bonded experience because they're saying, I'm afraid this isn't going to be safe. So if you notice that, like projecting the perfect person onto, I don't know, someone who's peripherally in your life, like they're not even really in your friend group or you don't really know them, but you're projecting perfection onto them and saying, well, if I was just with that person, maybe this wouldn't be so bad or everything will be better. So I better leave this relationship I'm in. That's a clue that you might have a protective part that is simply trying to get you away from ever feeling a sense of home again if home wasn't safe or if home wasn't consistent for you. And I can tell you, because I've had these parts, that part will just keep doing it. Then you're with the next person and they'll do it again and again and again and again because they're all ways to get you out of that relational dynamic. Other ways our parts will do this is we'll notice that they might try to focus, this is very common, on all of the things that our partner is not doing well or right. So we can be hyper fixated on things we want to fix about them. That's often, by the way, also an indicator that there are things internally within us that we are orienting to, or a way rather, we are orienting towards ourselves, which is as I am isn't enough. So if I feel some residue within me of not feeling worthy, not having self-compassion or self-acceptance, what I might do to my partner is project that onto them. So the closer I get to them, the more that I'm now really hyper fixated on trying to change them or the things that I want to be different, because that's what I'm perpetually doing to myself. So that's another way our protective parts can try to get us out of the experience, or telling us that with somebody else, it's going to feel more exciting. You know, like I named the boring thing a moment ago. I really want to hammer home for you, though, again, it won't be this way forever. I once had a client say, well, I guess I'd rather just be in that dynamic where at least I can feel alive than being in this boring thing. And what I told them was, you have to build your capacity to be in this healthy thing, and then it will feel more alive, more electric than anything you could ever imagine. So let's talk about that. What's the work? So how do we actually change this once you're in this secure attachment? So you've drawn in somebody who is wonderful. Congratulations to you. That is the work that you have done. I hope that you can really celebrate yourself in that. The work is, number one, not to run away when it doesn't feel like we expect, because that's usually what people do. They run away because it doesn't feel like they expect. And then we find ourselves continuing that process of like a really good person that, I don't know, it doesn't feel really great. And then we do it again and again and again, and never allow ourselves to actually lean into the relationship to show, not tell our nervous systems and our parts that the past is actually different. We have to be in the relationship for this to occur. I've said this before in another episode, but at one point, a therapist and mentor of mine said to me, who I worked with, said, okay, Sarah, it's time for you to get into a relationship. And I was like, what do you mean? I've done so much great work here. We're doing great work. Why do I have to do that? That was my avoidant self not wanting to actually do what I'm talking about right now. But of course, I knew that what they were saying, and essentially what they were getting at is there's only so much that can happen in the therapeutic container. We then have to go put this into action so that our parts can actually see that things are different. And if you are in a safe relationship where you look at, the relationship and you say, there's so many things about this that are amazing, I really want this to work, then I really invite you to not run away, to take your time in the relationship so you can build capacity to be inside of it. Something that I also find really helpful is if you have protective parts that are trying to sabotage you or get you out of it, which, by the way, they always sound very logical. The things they say are going to seem like they make a lot of sense to try to get you out of there. What I find can be really helpful is saying to those parts, I'm going to stay in this for a year or 6 months or whatever you decide it to be. And then after that time, if I still feel this way, then we can go. And that can really help those parts who are feeling overwhelmed or are feeling that sense of being trapped. And it's also what's necessary to build our capacity. So if, and the caveat is if, you feel like this is something you really want, and there's so many things about this that are really good, I invite you to lean in. And a few ways that we lean in, and meaning the work we need to do, are number one, we have to show our parts how our partner is different from our caregivers. Now, clearly, if you're in a safe relationship, you've done enough work where they do know to some degree that they are different, but they might not know fully. And so what I invite in is when you're doing parts work. So essentially what this means is first we connect to our adult self. So literally, you can think of a moment where you felt most capable and able. It could be when you were in nature. It could be a moment when you were feeling into your spiritual practice, when you're protecting another. Any moment you felt like you. And then I want you to invite in any part that has struggled in your relationship. All you have to do is ask yourself a couple things. You can say, when I was in an argument with my partner, or I felt scared in the relationship, just look back on a moment that didn't feel good. Ask yourself, how old did I feel in that moment? So when my partner didn't get back to me or I felt insecure, how old did I feel? And invite that part in. And then what I want you to do is I want you to get an image of your partner and put them in front of you. So meaning seeing them in space with you. You can do this with your eyes closed. And I want you to show this younger part the kindness on your partner's face, like literally taking in how kind their face is. First, start with that. Then I want you to show that young part ways that your partner has shown up for you with safety and kindness and unconditional love and connection and protection as well. How they've chosen you, the things they've done, the things they've said, the way you've seen them interact with you in the world. And just begin showing the younger part how this partner is very, very, very different than perhaps the type of adults from your past that part is used to experiencing. The more that you do this, the more the parts are then going to see, oh, maybe this is different now. And the less they then superimpose the past onto your present. That's really, really important. For me, that's work that I had to do a lot of because for my parts, men were very dangerous because I was abused as a kid. So I had to show these parts. Look at how this person is so different. Not only that, but I remember at one point my partner so beautifully said to me, because, we do a lot of this work together, so beautifully said, Sarah, it's not just you that I want to protect. It's your younger parts too. And I think, in a beautiful, healthy relationship, that's what we're really wanting. I say this a lot, that we are the primary parent to our parts and our partner is like the secondary parent. And the more that we can show our partner who our parts are, the more that they can see them and love them and want to help them just like we are helping them for ourselves. That is really, really important. And the only way to do that is to let them behind the curtain a bit. So even hearing things like that, right? And like letting my parts in and saying, you remember how he said that thing? He really cares about you too. I remember once my partner said how he wishes he could have traveled back in time and rescued those parts. And letting those parts know that, like, look at this person who is so different from people in the past. And the more that we do that, the more that what occurs is something called decoupling. So in terms of trauma, we have a whole episode on trauma, but there are two ways that we can orient to a trauma. We can be overcoupled or undercoupled. Undercoupled means I am very disconnected from the experience. I don't feel anything about it at all. I might not remember it. So I'm very disconnected. Overcoupling is when our nervous system over-associates the past with the present. So for my system, here's what an overcoupling looked like. I was abused by multiple men as a child. And so my system said, well, all men are dangerous. So it's overcoupled, meaning it's not just some men, it's all men. That was what was occurring for my nervous system. So what we need to do is decouple that. So show our systems that not all men are this way, that men can be very, very different and wonderful and loving and beautiful. And so this exercise of doing this parts work to show our system how our parts are different, how our partner is different, is absolutely vital. The second thing that we have to work on is building our capacity for vulnerability and exposure. Now, for many of us, whether you've had a childhood like mine where exposure and vulnerability was extremely dangerous, or maybe you had an experience in childhood where you had loving parents, but they didn't have capacity to be with their own emotions, so that when you showed emotions, they shut them down. Like they said, "Oh, honey, you're fine. You don't need, let's not dwell on the past. We just need to focus on the present. Let's make cookies together." That's like a way to avoid your feelings and to shut them down. So what our system learns is, I'm going to fortify and not go there, because when I was exposed in the past and vulnerable, it was not met. And that's a very, very painful thing. So earlier I said, as you get further into a relationship, you might notice that you go from feeling pretty confident at the beginning, and then all of a sudden you notice, like, what in the world is going on? This is a safe relationship, and now I'm feeling not confident. I feel insecure. I feel scared. I feel vulnerable. I feel out of control. And this happened to me. And at one point, I remember my partner saying, "I'm confused, Sarah, because I would want you to feel safer. Like we've created something safer." So, he didn't understand why that was occurring. And so a lot of people don't fully understand that. And of course, I had to explain that to him. And you might have to with whomever you're in partnership with, if this is what's occurring for you. And the reason this happens is because at first, our parts are really defended, meaning they're self-protected. The closer you get into something that's safe, and this is what I told my partner, this is happening because you're so safe. You're so safe that I don't have to protect myself anymore. And so that means that these vulnerable parts, these parts that felt so scared and so exposed, are now able to show themselves again. And the showing of themselves is what allows the deepest levels of healing to actually occur in a relationship. So I just want to name, like, that's a really normal part of the process. And our work is to build our capacity for that vulnerability and exposure. So that might mean at first, having a conversation where, as you notice, you're going to let them behind the curtain more or share more about how you're feeling. Can I touch the edge of that in my physiology? So can I communicate just a little bit more than feels comfortable and be with the sensations of it? That at first might start with, I'm going to write them a letter or a text, because that feels like a safer place to do it. And then can I do that in person and lean into the emotion more? For me, I had this deep feeling of inadequacy because I was not loved as a child. And I was also told very cruelly that I was inadequate. So when this part got exposed, it was dealing with the levels of that part's feelings, which were really scary. And so the more that I could let that part be seen by another and then get a reparative experience where that part got to see that they are loved just as they are, the more healing could transpire. And, when I told you my therapist and mentor said, like, Sarah, you got to get into a relationship, I had already done all that work with my parts. I had done so much work on loving them, showing them safety and connection and compassion and all the things, how wonderful they were. But they also needed to experience it with a safe other in a romantic partnership, because that's where the deepest level of attachment healing can occur, because it mimics so much our childhood and the past. And we want to go gently and slowly with this, gently and slowly. There is no hurry. I say a lot that we have to work at the rate of our most apprehensive part. So however that part is oriented, or however they're feeling, that most scared part, that's the pace we want to go. Not rushing them. By the way, if you try to rush your parts, your nervous system will come in and stop you in the form of dysregulation and say, no, we are not going any further with this. And then we can, of course, sabotage things too. The way that I see a healthy relationship is that in so many ways, we all have these beautiful orphaned little parts of us inside of ourselves, these younger selves. And even if you have loving, wonderful parents, there are parts that were orphaned, meaning there were things your caregivers couldn't do for you. And those young parts are still experiencing that, that the things they never got. And our work is to first become the primary parent to our parts. So the more that I am the primary parent, that means that my parts look to me first. When you are not the primary parent, you're going to find yourself in unhealthy relational dynamics because your young parts don't have you. So they're brilliantly looking for somebody else to rescue them. And then we're in that dynamic I named before of love from survival versus love from choice. So the more that you become that primary parent and I can hear my parts, I create safety for them, I pick them up, I've done all that. That is why you've attracted somebody who's safe and wonderful. And they've done the same. And now it's like we're coming together, our adult selves that we've worked very hard to get online, and our connection to our younger parts. And now what we're doing is we're becoming the secondary parent to our partner's parts, and they are doing the same for us. And so not only do our parts now have us to help them, they have our partner too. And the more that we can advocate for our parts, I can speak on their behalf and communicate to my partner what that part is feeling, what that part needs, the more they can be a part of this process of healing the past with us. And that's why, like, there's so much, we watch movies and read romance novels, if that's something that you do. I don't know, maybe you do. And you just think like, oh, it's just about the love stuff. Like, that's it, It's not. The deepest form of love is really about helping to set each other free and being this beautiful, safe foundation for each other. And when you are that safe foundation for each other, it's the safe base we never got in our lives, the full safe base. That is what allows you to go out in the world and take risks. That's what allows you to be messy out in the world and make mistakes. And because you know that you have this safe, secure base to come back to, you have this person that sees all parts of you because you have bravely shown them all parts of you. And they say, I love all parts of you. Maybe there's some parts of you that annoy me, like, Sarah, you're late always. You're always 5 minutes late. Why is that? That's something that my partner would say. But I love all parts of you, and I accept all parts of you, and I see them and want to be just as much a part of their journey home to you as you have been a part of their journey too. And so that's the full journey of what it's like to come into a safe, secure attachment. And then the things like boring, oh my goodness, that's long gone. It no longer feels boring. It feels like the most beautiful, like, deep breath you've ever taken. You feel free, you feel alive, you feel content, you feel excited. You feel attracted, you feel sexually attracted, all the things you're wanting, you feel. It's not boring anymore. And it doesn't feel scary and terrifying anymore because your parts have seen this person is actually different. And maybe the past is actually gone. And so healthy relationship, when we come into it, I know it's confusing at first because it doesn't feel like how you think it's going to feel. And that's because your system needs to be in it to reorient to it, to build capacity for it. But when that happens, it may be one of the greatest gifts of your life. It truly has been for me, and I know it can be for you too. And it was what will allow the rest of your life to blossom in really beautiful ways. Ready to get unstuck in your life? My workbook, How to Gain Control Over How You Feel, is a free trauma-informed guide to help you heal at the nervous system level and expand into the bigger life you're wanting. Get started by clicking on the link in the description. Okay, we're ready for the Q&A portion of this episode. Hi, Rach. It's good to see you today.
Hi, Sarah. Good to see you.
We both sure know what it's like to come into a secure attachment for the first time. So I'm excited to get into these questions and talk a little bit about our own process in making our way into healthy dynamics too.
Yeah, definitely. I felt like I could have written all of these questions. So they felt so apt when I read them. And here's the first one for you. Why am I not attracted to a safe person who I love and is everything I ever wanted? How do I know if the lack of attraction is normal or it's coming from my childhood imprint of love?
Well, as we talked about in this episode, and of course in previous episodes, our current relationships are going to be informed by one of two things, or actually informed by both things. Your earliest childhood experiences of relational dynamics inform our adult relationships, as well as the amount of healing work that we've done up until this point. So as we talk about in this episode and other episodes, the more that we create that internal secure attachment, the more that we actually change what our baseline for love is. And then the result of that is the people that we draw in changes. There's only so much work that can be done in the therapeutic container. We have to then go out into the world and have relational experiences in the same kind of container that we were wounded in. Now, of course, there's slight variation, right? Because a romantic partnership is very different from experience with a caregiver. But they mimic each other enough that it allows for our system to have a reparative experience. So all that is to say, you can do so much work and change, your attachment in really profound ways, meaning with your therapist or practitioner, you can come into a secure attachment, maybe with your animals, with your friends, with family members. And then in terms of romantic partnership, a lot of that work really has to happen in the container. So we get into a romantic relationship that is safe. First of all, let's celebrate that, right? Because it means that I have done enough work to change the pattern. You know what that's like, right, Rach?
Yay!
Yeah. I mean, personally, I can say that I had done so much work and then at a certain point decided, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get into a romantic relationship and had, really shifted away from that disorganized attachment. And then, of course, inside that romantic partnership, other things were bubbling up, the last bits of unresolved attachment stuff, because they have to come up with the person that is, your primary person, which mimics the primary caregiver. So I just want to name that for the person that submitted this question, when you get to a point where you're like, I drew in somebody who does not replicate the pattern anymore. They're no longer emotionally unavailable. They're no longer unavailable to regulate, or unable rather to regulate their own emotions. They're present, steady, here, loving, kind, safe, all of those things. That can only happen because of the work that you've done. Otherwise, your nervous system will not attract that person because they don't mimic your childhood enough. So meaning we always are going to attract partners that mimic our childhood experience. But when we do that, enough of the internal co-regulation work, the attraction to a partner shifts. So let's just celebrate that. Now you get into the romantic partnership, as we talked about a bit in this episode, and we can guarantee that at first, it's not going to feel great. And the reason being is because we have to build our capacity for the good. It doesn't feel good at first. The reason being is because our nervous system likes to associate things. So if in the past, someone who is consistent, safe, available, present, all of those things was not either available or it was dangerous, they were dangerous, then our system is going to say, I don't know about that. So this is really about our capacity building to be in the safe relational dynamic. And we've talked about this before, Rachel, but for both of us having a disorganized attachment, not to speak for you, but to speak for you, we can go from experiences of, wow, this is really nice, to, this is not good. This is the wrong person. I have to get out of here, or this is terrifying, or I'm not attracted to you. And so that's just the old attachment wounding getting, activated. And the more that we can lean into in our embodied experience, the connection, the safety, the attunement, the vulnerability, the more our system builds capacity for it. And the other thing that I just want to name is it's very important to check in with yourself when you're feeling regulated in adult you. And from that place to ask yourself, how do I actually feel about this person? And what feels good to me about this relational dynamic? And really imprint that. So I call that marinating in the experience. Really be with that and let it settle in your body so that you can imprint that as your truth. So our bodies are guiding our truth at all times. That's really important. The other thing I just want to lastly name is when you're having moments of connection, whether it's like you're sitting on the couch and you look at your partner and you think, oh, they're so cute, or they say something and you just feel warm in your body or open. We want to take those moments and really see if you can be with them as long as possible. That's capacity building. So instead of rushing on to the next thing or bypassing it, can I really be in what is that like to feel that? What is it like to feel this connection and closeness? What sensations do I notice? What feelings arise? That builds our capacity to hold more. So the more that we do this, the more our nervous system sees that which was either once not available or once dangerous is safe for me. And then the good starts to actually feel good. And this is why if someone is wonderful, like you look at them on paper and you're like, this is a really great person, but I just don't feel that fire, or I just not sure I feel attracted. We want to give it some space to breathe, meaning give your nervous system space inside that container instead of just running away and saying, it's not right because I don't feel that deep attraction, or it's not right because it doesn't feel exciting. It may simply be that your parts don't yet know that that is safe and your nervous system doesn't know that is safe. So the more we give it some breathing room and say to yourself, yeah, after 6 months or a year or whatever, and by the way, those numbers I just gave do not have to be the numbers that you choose time-wise, but I'm going to give it some time. And after that period of time, if my system is still telling me, no, it's not, I'm not feeling that deep attraction, then it might be time to say, this relational experience is complete. But we need to give ourselves time in the experience. Otherwise, those are protective parts that are trying to get us out of the relationship.
And that's so wise, because so many of us are so used to the trauma bond intensity where it's like red hot chemistry straight right off the bat, and actually that isn't always what it seems. And so when we equate meeting someone new who maybe there isn't those fireworks, it can feel like they're not the right person because we're so used to the kind of crash and intensity. So yeah, that's really, really wise, because then actually you can get used to people and feel what it's like to have someone be kind and love you how you deserve to be loved and cherished. And they might be new things that your nervous system hasn't experienced before.
That's right. And we all have very, very smart protective parts that say all kinds of things to try to make sure that we're safe. And they sound, these protective parts don't sound unreasonable. They're very good at sounding rational. So, a protective part might say, you're in a relationship with someone who's safe and attuned and all the things you never got. And then the protective part might think about, I don't know, a colleague that you have that seems really great, or somebody that you peripherally know, and say, well, if I was in a relationship with them, I think that then I would feel all the other things I really want to feel. And maybe that person's more right for me. And the protective part's going to come up with like 100 reasons why that other person is more right and why you should leave. Here is the important thing to know, that these protective parts, and that part that I just named, that kind of sounds like it's not super young, maybe a teenage part, that's a fantasy, right? Because I actually don't know what it's like to be in a relationship with someone who's peripherally in my life that I don't really know, or someone I don't know at all, or even a coworker. And I'm projecting onto them a perfect partner, right? Or that part of me is. And so many people don't realize that's a part. And what happens is we leave something that might be really good for us. I work with so many people that will say, that relationship from 5 years ago, I wish I never left it. They were a really good person. And I've been in the same pattern since. And I would say to them, well, first of all, the regret is not something we want to live in. It's an opportunity for self-compassion and also for learning. And that was happening because a protective part was saying, do not lean into this. The reason why our protective parts don't want us to lean into it is because they're saying, I never want to feel the wounding that I felt as a little child. I give this imagery a lot. When we did not have caregivers who could consistently meet our needs, it's literally like, think of a little child vulnerably without any self-protection, emotional self-protection, is reaching up to a caregiver, just saying, love me, pick me up and love me, please. And for that to be not met and denied is one of the most painful things that a human being can experience. And so what our systems do is they fortify and say, never again am I going to do that. Never again, because that pain was too big. So as someone wonderful comes towards us, it's the thing that we want the most. But these protective parts are saying, I don't want you to be that exposed again. I don't want you because if you are that exposed again, we are opening up to the possibility of feeling that pain, and I don't want it. And that's how these protective parts come in, and they seem so rational. And that's why I'm saying we need to actually give a safe container, breathing room, to see if this is actually right. Because the only way to know that is to show, not tell these protective parts it is safe to open up. And I also just lastly want to say, movies, social media, what we're seeing is these perfect relational dynamics. They don't exist. And the more we can talk about what is it actually like to be a human being in a relationship, the more we're normalizing it so that we can see, oh, this is not something that's necessarily bad. This is actually a healthy thing that's occurring.
Yeah. And that's so, so needed. Otherwise, we're matching ourselves against a fantasy that doesn't actually exist and could never be possible anyway. So, yeah, that's super hard. So the next question, how do I know if I'm experiencing a real or perceived threat in my relationship? I'll be telling my partner something really important and he'll look at his phone and I suddenly start to feel super shut down. Is what I'm feeling about what's happening right now him not listening or about something else?
It is so important to understand the difference between real and perceived threats and how that dynamic shows up relationally. So early on in the podcast, we talked about real and perceived threats. And if you're a new listener, you probably didn't hear that. So I'm just going to quickly go over them. Real threat is pretty obvious, right? There's a danger in front of me right now. And if there's a danger in front of me, we want our nervous system to become dysregulated, which means actively self-protected. Anxiety, worry, frustration, fear, terror, rage, racing thoughts, apathy, hopelessness, depression, dissociation, all of those things we'd classify as not good. That's active self-protection. Perceived threats is truly one of the primary reasons for human suffering, and it all is rooted in the nervous system. So perceived threat is essentially where your nervous system, you're starting with your threat detector, neuroception, is seeing danger where there's not actually danger. And the reason it does this is because the threat detector's job, remember, is to look out into the world and internally to see if we're safe or not. It looks to or resources our internal database, which lives in our brain, of every lived experience we've ever had to see if the current situation is safe. So it's really cool we have this entire self-protective system working inside of us. Now, it doesn't look for identical matches. It looks for flavorings or similarities. And so let me give an example. Let's say that as a kid you were bitten by a dog, and I don't know, let's say it was a German Shepherd. I love German Shepherds, nothing against you German Shepherds, but a German Shepherd bit a kid, right? So this kid grows up, that doesn't get resolved. And now this adult sees a German Shepherd that is friendly and kind and wonderful and just wants to roll around with them. And their threat detector said, oh, whoa, German Shepherds. What intel do we have on that? Looks to 25 years ago being bit by a German Shepherd. And it says they are not safe. And so in that moment, it superimposes past onto the present and says, this must not be safe. And as a result, we become dysregulated. Not only do we become dysregulated, but I actually will relive the autonomic response or the feelings and sensations that I had 25 years ago. We literally travel time, and past gets superimposed on the present. And so I'm perceiving threat where there's actually not threat. Now, romantic partnerships is where we superimpose our childhood onto the present the most. Why? Because they have the most similarities or flavorings, right? Like we've talked about this. In the past, they were your home, family, where you belonged, your person, where you were supposed to experience love, connection, intimacy, all those things. Well, that's what a romantic partner is supposed to be for us. So what occurs with our romantic partner is they do something like they look at their phone. Now, let's say you have a loving partner who struggles with boundaries with work. So they really struggle with that. They come home, but they can't really disconnect fully. And hopefully that's something they're working on. But you're telling them something important, they look at their phone. Not because they are not interested in what you have to say, not because they don't deeply care and want to support you, but because that's their own work about boundary setting and they're probably over-functioning parts, protective parts, yada, yada, yada. We don't have to get into that made-up person story. So that's what's occurring for them. But let's say in your database, you had caregivers who were neglectful and never emotionally saw you. They couldn't meet you. So when you go to do something really vulnerable, like say, I have this important thing to share with you, and they say, great, I can't wait to hear about it. And then they disconnect. Your threat detector said that disconnection reminds me too much of the past. What did I need to do then? Let's do the same thing now. So if in the past it was to fortify and shut down, what you're going to notice is you do the same thing. So you might all of a sudden go from being really open to like there's a steel wall there, and you emotionally disconnect. And you say to yourself, and I'm laughing because I've done this. You say to yourself things like, you know what? I don't need you. I don't know why I even tried. I've been fine on my own. I don't need to lean on you. I'm not going to ask for help. And then your partner looks at you and says, oh, I'm so sorry. What were you saying? And then there's just no ability to reconnect. It's just, no, it's fine. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. And that's all a self-protective, defended response based on the past. So how do we know if we are actually superimposing the past on the present, or if our response is happening based in today? Well, the thing we want to do when we find ourselves more regulated, so when we're back in our adult self, we are in this time in 2024 or whatever year it is when you're listening to this, and we say to ourselves, did my reaction match the circumstance of what occurred? Now, this pattern that I just named is something that I did for a very long time. And if I asked myself, Sarah, does it match the circumstance for you to totally shut down, to become like a steel wall, to not be able to connect for, sometimes for hours or days at a time? Does that match what happened? Well, the answer would be no, right? My partner, if my partner's safe, my partner is safe. So that doesn't match the past. I don't need to be that self-protected. So then we want to ask ourselves, well, if this isn't based in the past, or rather, if this isn't just based in the present, it's based in the past, when is the first time I remember feeling this? So that clues you into what this response is actually about. It's much less about perhaps today and more about the past. That doesn't let the partner off the hook, of course, but it's really cluing us into what is the root of this big activation I'm experiencing. Now, from that place, what we want to do is come into a repair with our partner when we're regulated. And so what I talk about a lot is our job is to let each other behind the curtain. This is how we actually heal the past in the present. So it might look like something like me saying, I realized a lot of my response was actually about the past. And I remember being a kid and having these needs or these desires of my caregivers, and they couldn't meet them. And maybe it's a specific example. Like you had a talent show and your parents didn't come to it, and everyone else's parents were there, and it felt so overwhelming, and you felt shame and all of these feelings. So when you look away at your phone, it just reminds me of that. And then we ask for, what is the need of my adult self that will also meet the need of the young part? This is how healing happens in the relational container. And I might advocate for my parts and my adult self and say, so when I'm coming to you, just please know there's a tenderness about me right now because it feels scary for that part. Can you, when I say I need to talk, can we have phones in the other room? No distraction, no TV, no phone. Because I really need you to be engaged with me. And of course, the hope is that they say, I didn't realize that was happening. I'm sorry. And yes, let's do that. And vice versa for them too. And when we do this, everybody, this is how we actually not only heal the past, but repair the rupture in the present moment. Most people in relational dynamics, when a fight or rupture occurs, they both get activated, both perceive threats, so reminded of the past. And then we just wait for our adult selves to come back and we brush it under the rug and don't resolve it. And that means that you'll find yourself in the same cycle again and again and again and again without ever having resolution. And that's how resentment builds. The more we can repair and have resolution, we heal the past, we change the present, and we get our needs met in the relationship too.
And I'm so glad you role modeled what you would say and what you would do, because so often we've not had that shown to us, how to have a healthy repair. And I know in my journey, I've gone away a lot and done like lots of inner work and inner repair, but never voiced it in a relationship to then make the changes actually happen within the relational container either. So it's really nice to have you role model what it sounds like and what it looks like, and to give people that wisdom.
And intimacy what is that? It's well, I've never thought about it this way, but it's like letting someone see into you, right? That's what intimacy is. See into me. And that is a horrifying thing. If when we let people see into us and who we were given the message that as we are was not enough, we were harmed and hurt in any particular way. And so what we will do is we'll avoid that because our system is saying it's too dangerous, it's too scary. And so it's an act of true courage to say, I'm going to let you see this part of me that part of me that believes it is so unlovable. I'm going to let you see that part. And I'm going to let you come towards that part. And that is the only way for these parts to have full, completed healing. Like you named, I did the same thing. Well, I'm just going to go by myself and do this work and do this healing work all alone and continue to do that. Well, it's great, but it's avoiding the true intimacy that is necessary in a safe, securely attached relationship. And we want to go slowly with this, not beyond what feels tolerable. But the more you do this with time, it really is the thing that allows the past to be healed in the present and allows relationships to be these beautiful places where you can come as you are, where it's not so much work. I find in all the work I do with people and couples and myself, so many of us are working so hard in our relationships or in our lives to present in a way that we think is going to be loved. It's so exhausting to do that because it's so much work. And when we can come into an experience after enough of these micro moments of being loved as we are, where we are safe to be us, then your romantic relationship becomes your refuge. That I know I can come to this place just as I am, and that I will be cared for and loved and tended, just like I will do the same for them, which then is what allows you to go out into the world and take risks and do all of the things that we want to do in our lives. I'm going on lots of tangents here, but this last one's really important. I work with a lot of people who are in relational dynamics that are reminding their parts of the past. So they're consistently re-experiencing the past of, oh, I'm sort of loved, not really. Wait, you might go away, you might come back. I don't know. So I'm chronically in a stress response. I chronically do not feel safe. I chronically feel like as I am is not enough. How in the world are you going to be able to step into the life you're called to if that's the base you're coming from? You cannot. It's not physiologically possible, which is why children in homes where they are not getting this can't thrive in school because they don't have that safe base. They can't take risks. They can't go out into the world and be who they are because they don't have the safe foundation. And so another reason why it is so important that we focus our energy on this. And if we are in a dynamic that isn't supporting us in this way, that we either see, can it change? Or if not, what kind of safety do I have to give my parts to leave this dynamic? Because I will not be able to step into the life I'm called to without it. So there's a lot of benefit to coming into this safe base. It is truly what's necessary for us to soar in our lives.
Oh, there's so much tenderness in what you've shared today already, Sarah. And just you talked about children in that last answer to the question. And that relates well to this question, as in, my parents loved me a lot and always provided for me. So I don't understand why relationships are so hard.
Yeah. So one of the things that I find can be most confusing for people is when you've had loving caregivers who weren't perfect. And I'm laughing because none of them were perfect. And by the way, of anyone of our generation or older, our caregivers there was no real access to this work like there is today, right? First of all, there was no internet. So what are they going to do? Look it up in the encyclopedia? Like it wasn't in the encyclopedias. You can look at flags and birds, but like you're not going to find out about attachment and how you parent well, right? It just wasn't certainly not mainstream, and it was very, very few people had access to it. So what does that mean? Your parents either repeated what they received, or they did the very best they could based on what they received. So they just tried to do better than they got. But if they had unresolved trauma in their bodies that has not been addressed, then it will create limitations in their ability to parent. And so loving us as children is not enough. And here are just some examples of what that could look like, right? Let's say that you had a mother who loved you so deeply. She was able to be attuned and compassionate and kind and soft and gentle and loving. But in her childhood, she was not safe to access her own healthy aggression. Healthy aggression is life force energy. It's our ability to defend or protect ourselves. So maybe she had a father who was a bit of a dictator in the home. And so what her system learned was, in order to survive this or just to be in this experience, I have to fawn and be obedient and not say what I really want to say, which is, you can't speak to me that way, or to run away or fight back or whatever. So her system doesn't have access to healthy aggression. She cannot defend herself. Guess what that means? She likely won't be able to do that for us. So let's say we had experiences at school where we were bullied, or our teacher was, being inappropriately hard on us, that she doesn't have the ability to access that healthy aggression to defend us. Or maybe our father was a little too tough on us, and she didn't have the ability to say, hey, you can't speak to them that way, the kids that way. And so the result of that is we were not protected. So we were loved deeply, but we weren't protected. That's just one example of a really good parent who, wasn't able to meet our needs. Another quick example of this, let's say that you had a father who loved you so deeply, and he showed up to every single thing that you have, like every school event he was at. He was doing all the things. But in his childhood, there was no emotional intimacy. When he had access to his emotional world, because we all come into the world with access to that, his sensitivity, his softness, all of that. Let's say he was feeling sad about something as a child and crying, and he got the message, boys don't cry, or you're fine. You're fine. We don't cry in this house, or people have it so much worse, like suck it up, or whatever. So he got a message that he was shamed for having his emotional experience, or maybe there was just no one there to meet his emotional experience, so he shut it off. Guess what that means in his adult life? He does not have the capacity to be emotionally intimate with you. And so you're a child with a father who cannot see you and meet you emotionally. So both of those things I just named, are primary needs that all children have. And these are loving parents I'm talking about that cannot meet our needs. So then what happens is we get into our adult relationships, and the result of it is we are going to attract people who either also maybe like a loving man who cannot meet my emotional needs, or it could be a loving woman who can't meet my emotional needs, or a person, or we are attracted to a person who is so kind and loving, but they don't seem to have the ability to ever defend us or come to our aid in a way to protect us when we need that support, or be a teammate in that way. And so this is how those patterns get replayed in our adult lives. And it can be really confusing because we think, well, I had this great childhood, so why did that occur? Because your parents couldn't do everything right. And it's very important in the healing process. I work with a lot of clients who I can hear they feel guilty for even acknowledging this, but my parent did so many things right. Well, if we want to love them more deeply than we already do, and be able to let go of, I don't want to name, one thing that can arise from these dynamics is the lack of having those needs met, is we can notice that we might feel resentful of our parents, or we might get short with them, like frustrated easily or agitated by them. That's all clues of unmet needs, usually old unmet needs. And then we beat ourselves up like, oh, why did I just do that to my mother? Oh, I feel really bad about it. Well, we must process the actual appropriate feelings to not getting these needs met, which is to feel angry, to feel frustrated. And we can do that somatically in healing containers. We don't have to go process this with them. The more that you let yourself feel the appropriate responses, like, I'm really mad that didn't happen. And of course, it wasn't your fault. You did the best you could, but I'm still angry. The more that energy can actually leave your body forever. And the result of that is then the agitation or frustration with your caregivers goes away because you've actually resolved it. And not only that, the more that you've given these things to yourself, that's the internal co-regulation with our parts, the more our relationships change in our present life. So they no longer mimic the things we didn't get, but they now mimic the things we've given ourselves.
So rather than cover over with that kind of, it was great, my childhood was great, and it's about acknowledging, actually, that wasn't so great and that didn't feel good. And yeah, I do still feel angry about that. And actually bringing that in and then allowing the expression of that within a healing container, that then allows for a smoother relationship in the present.
That's right. And whenever I work with people who say something like, I had a pretty perfect childhood, there wasn't anything wrong, I laugh because I know that means they have a defended part, a protective part, whose job is to actually protect their parents. A lot of us have parts who their job was to protect our parents, meaning I cannot possibly let them be bad in any way. Because if I did that, I would be harming them or hurting them. And also I would be acknowledging, that everything wasn't okay, which means then I have to go towards this uncomfortability and the pain that I have from the past. But the truth is, there is no perfect childhood. No parent got it exactly right. And the letting ourselves lean into this is actually what will let you love your parents more fully. So this is not, oh my gosh, this is so mean or unkind or ungrateful. No, it's not that. It's letting yourself have the normal human response to something like not being emotionally seen. And the appropriate response to that might be something like, I have anger about that. I also have deep sadness about that. And when we process that with our parts, then we can show up with much deeper love in those relationships now.
And that's what everyone wants. That's what we all want. This kind of deep, deep connection and deep meeting and intimacy. And it's interesting that comes through the processing of pain.
Yeah, it's why I say a lot. You said that so beautifully, Rachel, because what I say a lot is the only way out is through. And this is why this work is so freaking brave. I think it's why so many people don't do it, because it takes going towards the thing that our system fears the most. And when we do that, we go towards it tolerably and slowly, and our system sees, it's different now. It sets us free. And then we can have the thing that we've been desiring since the moment we got here.
That's just so moving to me, Sarah. And it does, I think of my own parents who I'm really close to and have, I've had a journey of getting to feel that fully and see that irritation dissipate and go. And so, yeah, it's really nice to hear you talk about the journey to that and like the hero's quest that we're on. Like it is a hero's quest to go towards that which is painful, but then knowing the fruits from the other side.
That's right. Thanks for being here today, Rach.